Hi, I'm Ryan Hunter, and this is Kalispell Connections, a program where I typically interview local community leaders about issues important to the community. But I'm going a little further afield for this Earth Day, talking to my friend Becky Edwards down in Bozeman, the executive director of Mountain Mamas. Hi, Becky.
Hi, Ryan. Thanks for having me today. I'm tickled to be here. And full disclosure, I lived in Whitefish for a year and missed the beautiful summers up there. You guys have amazing sunshine and lakes and open water swimming that we do not have down here in Bozeman. But we have more sun in the winter. So there's that.
Yes, yes. So I guess first question is, what is Mountain Mamas? Can you explain that?
Sure. So the Mountain Mama started, gosh, probably in about 2012. And it was really just me and some of my girlfriends from around the state. We were all new parents. Um, and it was a way for us to connect. We started just with things that interested us, like what baby carrier doesn't chafe your hips, what trails are dry, where's a good place to go mountain biking with your kids. It was just a lot of shared information. And the real common thread through that was we just love to be outside with our kids. We love to raise our families outside. We've all made sacrifices, probably in some way, shape, or form to live here in Montana because of all the great outdoor amenities and recreation and open spaces that we have. And so that really became this common thread of women. And again, it started as our friends, and then kind of moved out from there. And as we went along through the years, and it was just basically a Facebook blog sort of thing, and we had a website where we mainly just blogged about things that were important to us. But it became clear that, and we all kind of worked in conservation in different capacities. A couple of gals worked for outdoor manufacturers. I worked for other conservation groups in communications fashions, and so we all had that awareness about us. But it just became really clear that there was no no real clear voice, dedicated voice, I guess, for women in conservation, and especially parents. And we're probably, I see this every time I go to DC or go to the Capitol. Parents, women, we are so passionate about this place where we live, and we would do, there's a lot to be said for the mama bear instincts. We would do just about anything to protect our kids and to make sure they've got a great place to grow up. And so over the years we started to get into some more advocacy issues, and just organizing and elevating women's voices for conservation issues, whether that's land conservation, water, climate. We're doing kind of wading into the energy climate side of things. We've been really active in land and water conservation to date, but that's kind of where we're at now, and we're growing. It's a very exciting thing, and it's I think a needed voice for our decision makers, and then just a gathering tool for women around the state to feel like they've got a direct path that really um, represents their thoughts and feelings on some of these issues, and they've got a way to amplify those.
Yeah, and I've certainly appreciated seeing the growth of the group and organization, and hearing that voice as well. The reason I wanted to bring you on for this Earth Day episode is I saw your column that you had written where you talked about the struggle of the pandemic and stay-at-home order for parents and families, and you were talking about our access to public lands and how that kind of unites us, and I was hoping you could speak to that and you could share with
Yeah,
us your perspective.
yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, my job now has kind of always been, but it's now more than ever. I mean, I figure out ways to communicate about conservation, and um, that's my job. And the last few weeks, certainly, as we're all navigating this pandemic, it's felt awkward for me to do my job because, my husband here, he runs a manufacturing company here in Bozeman, and he had to lay off 40 people, last week, and excuse me, a couple of weeks ago. And our kids are home. I'm in my bathroom, actually, if you see any towels. So my kids are home and they're downstairs, and we're all navigating this new reality, and there's a lot of fear and uncertainty, and I'm staying up at night, not able to sleep, worried about this, that, or the other. And I think a lot of people are feeling the same way. And My one release valve during the day, though, is being able, and I live right downtown in Bozeman, and I live really close to Boogert Park and the Alligator Trails and Pete's Hill. And, at some point during the day, I put on my running shoes and I go outside and I go on a run. And I'm able to see my neighbors, and we don't get close to each other, but we're able to see each other. My kids go on bike rides still. There's a creek, across the street from our house where they can go play. We still have these, spaces that are so important for our emotional and our physical well-being, and we still have access to those, and we have lots of them. It'd be great to have some more, but we have lots of them. And we're hearing from people around the nation that people in New York City, that they have a balcony that's that's their window to fresh air and to exercise. Washington State had to close all their fishing access sites because oftentimes they're so busy and worried about transmission. So we're still very lucky here in the state to be able to have parks, trails, open space, fishing access sites. And so that was really kind of the stimulus for that piece. I was supposed to be writing about something else, and it didn't feel right. And what felt right were celebrating and bringing awareness to the open spaces that we have, and showing some empathy for our neighbors and our friends, because we're all going through just a tough time, whether we're suffering job losses, financial uncertainty, God forbid, health issues. And these are places where we can still go out and find that community and know that we're not all alone in this battle.
Mhm. And I think one of the things that is really striking about Montana that unites us all is that there's really high support for our public lands across Montana.
Mm.
Isn't that right? Despite differences in backgrounds or political perspectives, the support for public lands is really high. What's your experience with that, and working on the issues that widespread support for public lands?
Yes, definitely. We're lucky. Public lands. So I always, one of my former clients actually up there would always have this great quote that public lands unites both sides of the aisle. And it really does. And you're hard pressed in Montana to find somebody that doesn't do something outside, active outside. Whether you're hunting, angling, backpacking, bird watching, mountain biking, backcountry skiing, ice fishing. There's so many opportunities, snowmobiling. And no matter how you're traveling through the landscape, you're all appreciating the resource. And excuse me, it's just been my absolute pleasure to work on different place-based campaigns and lead conservation efforts around the state, where we see, like for instance, I'm working on the Blackfoot Clearwater Stewardship Act. I've been working on that for years, and I love those partners in the Sealy. There's timber mill owners, there's ranchers, there's guest ranch owners and operators, there's outfitters, there's local hardware store owners, and they all move through landscape differently, but they all love it the same. And that's the commonality, the common denominator that we gather around here in Montana. And it's been true legislatively, both on stateside legislation and federal legislation, that, there's a lot of working across the aisle on things. And we're lucky in that. And we'd love to see more of that. And it's because of that, the ability to get outside and find, go on a hike. I run into, like for instance, down here, Steve White used to be on the Gallatin County Commission, and great man. And it seems like every time I would go for a backcountry ski up History Rock, I'd run into him. And, and those are just the great coincidences. Cindy Daines, I run into her every so often when I'm out hiking. And it's just so good to see these people out in our landscapes. And we all have that common shared love. And so during times like this, especially, we need to be gathering around things that bring us together and provide support for each other.
Yeah, and certainly that's a big reason why people live here in Montana. It's a big reason why I moved to Montana years ago, is that the outdoor resources and that access. And certainly in my work with the Flathead Land Trust, I work with a lot of different folks, a lot of farmers, and that shared love for the land is what unites us and able to accomplish so much in the conservation realm. I know you work on the Land and Water Conservation Fund. That's a really important funding source from the federal government for conservation. I was hoping you could explain real quickly in the last few minutes we have, what is it, why is it important, and what's the current status of it?
Sure. Yeah, I've been working on the Land and Water Conservation Fund probably since 2013, 2014. And LWCF, it's a weird acronym. People oftentimes don't know what it means, but I think we've been doing a good job as a conservation community of helping educate folks on what it is. But basically, it's a fund that Congress established about a little over 50 years ago now, that takes offshore oil and gas revenue and reinvests that into projects, conservation recreation projects around the nation. And so, I always say that you're hard pressed to not walk out your front door and come into contact with something that's been funded by LWCF. It's a very broad program, anything from the community playgrounds in cities, soccer fields, fishing. 3/4 of Montana's fishing access sites are actually funded through LWCF. Generational ranches are big supporters and recipients of LWCF dollars through conservation easements. They have a whole legacy forest program that supports healthy forests, supports timber mill jobs through forest restoration activities. And so it's just so broad. It's, parks, trails, generational ranches. You're likely coming into contact with it when you leave your house. And basically the program has to be renewed. It used to have to be renewed and funded every year through appropriations processes with Congress. However, earlier in 2019, we were able to pass permanent reauthorization. So that means the program is always there. It's never in question. What we're trying to pass right now is full dedicated funding for Land and Water Conservation Fund. And so basically that means that we wouldn't have to go back and fight each year to make sure that the full $900 million per year, which was originally established in the legislation, 50 years ago, actually goes to the program. Oftentimes Congress will use it for other purposes, and that money will get siphoned off for other needs. But we're really, especially in a state like Montana, where some of the longer term land transactions or, federal, trying to solve some of the federal patchworks and provide additional access for hunting, angling, some of those projects take longer than a year. And so to know that there's dedicated funding out there will really help us here in Montana to advance some of those conservation and recreation initiatives that we'd like to see. And we're lucky here in Montana because both of our senators, Senator Tester has been a longtime supporter of LWCF, and Senator Daines is as well. They've been great champions for this program, and they are both in support of full dedicated funding. And so basically where we're at right now with that legislation is it's been combined with the Restore Our Parks Act, which is parks maintenance for national parks. There's a lot of overdue infrastructure needs in our national parks and our gateway communities. So they've combined those two pieces of legislation into the Great American Outdoors Act. And we were real close, super close before the pandemic kind of set in to passing that legislation through the Senate floor and advancing that onto the president's desk. But obviously we've got a new landscape right now that we're navigating, and there's new priorities. And but again, as we kind of started this conversation, those spaces, the parks, the trails, the ball fields, my girls are avid soccer players and they're greatly missing their soccer season right now. But those are the places that we still connect, and they provide us that physical health, the mental health, and they also stimulate our economy. There's, $7.1 billion feeds into our outdoor recreational economy each year, which is a big driver in Montana. And so getting that legislation across the finish line is really going to benefit us in so many different ways. But especially it'll be a good ladder on the rung on the ladder to economic recovery for a lot of Montanans. So that's where we're at, and it's a great program, and something that just makes common sense for Montanans here.
Well, thank you so much, Becky, for taking time to speak with me, and happy Earth Day, and I wish you the best. Yeah.
Thanks so much for having me, and yeah, tickled to connect with you and all the folks in Kalispell and Whitefish.
All right. Thank you.